Um, for this week's tip, I want to talk less about how can I. We might get into that a little bit. This could be a longer video. But anyway, this video, I want to talk less about how can I and more about when should I. Specifically looking at balloon framing walls. So here I've got a project where I've got a second story, and I just sort of fabricated this up. So this floor slab right here is at 0 to the upper floor. This one right here is at 0 to the main floor. So that's my floor-to-floor height. I have a stair here. I've dropped in some windows. Let's throw another one in here just as a, maybe we'll do a couple of these. And then on this one we could set the window head height. So let's go ahead to story 1 and we'll do a typical 6'8" head height here. So just as an example, here are excuse me, here are sort of some windows dotted around on multiple stories running up the stair landing, etc. Now typically what I would do is I would model my walls from floor to floor and just stack them up. So here's an example where if I set this top link to the upper floor, set the top link offset to 0. Let's go ahead and copy this up and relink home story so that this one's on the upper floor, and set its top link offset here as well to tie to the roof story. So here's a typical platform framed wall situation, right? So if I drop that window in here and this window in here, they're associated to those walls per story. If I look at these in floor plan, I'm going to see each of those walls in their associated position per story. Let's go ahead and drop back to floor plan. So here on the upper floor, I see this wall here. Notice that on the upper floor, everything's missing all the way around because it's been platform framed. Now that's not the end of the world. We can certainly show this wall on multiple stories. When I would platform versus balloon frame a wall in Archicad is exactly a situation like this, where I have a wall, there's no floor plate in between. This wall literally just runs all the way up to the next story above. But then I run into situations where everything kind of blanks out. So this is kind of dabbling into that how do I. Now, if you had, let's say, a living room over here that was double height volume or something like that, where there was nothing on the floor above, it's all just empty over here, volume, maybe that's another situation. Or where you have clerestories that span multiple stories. That might be situations where things get balloon framed in Archicad. Really, the way I approach modeling in Archicad and how I handle certain situations is first by thinking how it would actually be built. There are obviously exceptions to that. There might be a cause for a wall like this with no floor, intermediate floor, to actually be modeled as if it were platform framed. And a lot of that has to do with how these windows show up. If we go back into our 3D view, let's do a marquee. This is an actual project I'm working on, so I don't want to include the full model, but if we could look back into here, if these windows right here, for example, were over here, they are going to be cut off by one wall or the other because they're kind of bisecting through that platform framed wall where it would be running through typically on this plate. So this would be a situation where maybe this wall comes to here and these walls, let's get rid of those windows associated to that wall. These walls that are going to be part of the platform frame package would come over here, and you can do a combination of those. So now in floor plan, these look correct here, but I need these walls also where I have this double height volume, where I have this these double height stair walls. I need these walls to show up as well in floor plan. So let's look at how we would do that. First thing, in those wall settings, I want to make sure that the show on story setting here is set to all relevant stories. And then I lose the ability to show it as symbolic cut, which is fine. I can start with projected with overhead here, and let's go ahead and say OK. If we go back into our floor plan settings here, or floor plan view rather. So you can see that wall now is showing on the main floor. The windows are now being excluded from this floor. Coming up to the next story, I'm going to see those walls as well, and I only see those windows as outlines. So there's a few things here. That wall maybe needs to be shown rather than projected with overhead. Maybe it needs to be shown as projected or cut only. Sometimes you have to kind of play around with this a little bit to get this right. But there's also an additional factor in whether or not things show up through this wall. So on the upper floor, for example, let's go back into 3D here, right? This window is happening, the head of that is 3 feet above this upper floor. So if the upper floor plan cut plane is typically at 4 feet, it's going to exclude that window. If I want this window to show on the upper floor, but maybe not this one, what I can do is under my document tools, and you could also go to the view map and go to the view settings. I've cropped that out here, but you can save a view with a floor plan cut plane at, let's say, 2.5 feet, or let's put it at 3 feet. That should include it. And you can say that we're going to have this include stories below as well, because that wall actually lives on the story below. So I'm going to include a story below this upper floor, and we'll say OK there. Wait for it to finish processing here. And then this window pops up because now this wall and the windows hosted in that wall are included within the floor plan range for this specific view. Now I could have another view that excludes that. So you can have different floor plan cut planes per view. You can have them at different heights and including different stories. The one thing that is constant is this wall is set to all relevant stories. So I'm controlling the relevancy of a story for this wall by that floor plan cut plane setting. Now if I go down another story, let's go back to the main floor. Right, on this main floor, it could be that the saved view for this one, the floor plan cut plane, maybe this is at 7.5 feet up and is including a story up and a story below. If I go OK here, and again it takes a second to process on this big file. So now this window is going to show up on this stories, the main floor stories floor plan cut plane. It does seem possible in this particular situation to find for that main level an elevation that would include both windows. So that's at about, looks like 9 feet or above. So on that floor, if I wanted both windows to show on the main floor, I would have to set the floor plan cut plane pretty high, like at 9 feet. So let's go back and review that again. So floor plan cut plane, let's put it at 9'3". Now that should include both windows here. So, and this window, because this wall is not set to all relevant stories, it's set to show symbolically as if it were cut through, not projected, not cut only. It's a symbolic view of that wall. It doesn't matter that the floor plan cut plane is over the top of this window because it's the symbol of this wall and window, not the cut of that wall and window. So if we go back into 3D to understand where that's at, the floor plan cut plane is way up here, almost to this floor plate right here. So it's well above the head height of this window. But this wall, being a platform framed wall, is showing symbolically, not projected with overhead. If I were to set this to projected, it may, back in here, exclude that window, depending on the window and the wall settings. So there are kind of so we see it disappear there now, because the floor plan cut plane is too high. So there are a few things that you have to juggle here. First of all, understanding why a wall may be balloon framed or not. It could be maybe just another hypothetical that you're actually building it as if it were balloon framed. You know, if you have an attic story or something like that and you're running it all the way up to the roof, it could be that this is actually ledgered off the wall. So maybe that's a reason to run the wall all the way up and not platform frame it. Maybe it's because there's a stairwell. Now certainly both options work. It's just that if understanding that if you are going to be modeling this as if it were a single wall running all the way up, you do have to manage the wall settings so that they show on all relevant stories with an appropriate floor plan display for all stories. And then you have to manage the floor plan cut plane as part of the default view settings. You're not going to be able to just roll with the typical current story option and 4-foot cut plane and expect all of your walls to show up, all your windows to show up as you want them to. You need to manage the floor plan cut planes in the same way that you would manage the layer combinations or any other view setting if you're going to use a balloon frame wall system in Archicad. Anyway, I hope this video finds you well on a Friday, and have a great weekend.